He did this after smoking a marijuana joint. He then went out and chopped up his mother and father.
But what Anslinger omitted in his testimony, as was published several days later in the Tampa newspaper, that Licata was probably schizophrenic, and there's very little probability that marijuana was the cause and effect of the terrible crime he committed.
Not a very nice thing to look at, but this is marijuana, and there's nothing beautiful about marijuana. Well, the officer drew his gun, reached for the closet door, and pulled out Victor.
Anslinger tells Congress that school children are using marijuana. That assertion results in the only testimony against the law. Dr. William Woodward of the American Medical Association testifies that for all the complaints about marijuana's danger to school children, there was no evidence to back it up. Congress disregards his testimony.
They just attacked him viciously. They said, how can you come down here trying to interrupt us when we're trying to do something good for the American people and so forth? Well, it turns out their argument with him had nothing to do with marijuana. They just chopped him into pieces and verbally excoriated him in front of this congressional hearing, and then lied about what he said.
Hearst follows the hearings, adding extra newspaper runs to cover the news in Washington and headlining the evils of marijuana. Across America, independent movies add to the propaganda, bombarding the public. The most famous, Reefer Madness, warns of the perils of smoking marijuana, as stated by Anslinger and Hearst.
Just take a puff of that.
Didn't come from the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, but Anslinger's bureau did endorse it. He did support it. In fact, in the opening scene, when the high school principal is talking to an audience of parents, he refers to the Bureau of Narcotics several times.
On Capitol Hill, Anslinger wins. Congress passes the Marijuana Tax Act, the first federal law against the drug. The Southwest gets the federal law they wanted. After 5 days of hearings, the marijuana tax law goes to Congress for a vote. It's passed within weeks by roll call vote. President Roosevelt signs the bill on August 2nd. It takes effect October 1st.
Perhaps one of Anslinger's most significant contributions to fighting drugs is that he, more than any other individual, demonized drugs. I don't know that Anslinger lied to Congress, but he was an effective propagandist, we might say.
The law requires that anyone wishing to buy, sell, distribute, or transfer marijuana must pay a tax and have a stamp. The penalty for failure to do so is 5 years in jail, a $2,000 fine, or both. But like the machine gun law, the government doesn't make the marijuana stamps available.
There was another problem, too, and that was that in order to get the license, you had to have the marijuana in hand. But if you had the marijuana in hand without the license, you had already violated the law.
2 days after the law goes into effect, the first offender of the Marijuana Tax Act, Samuel Caldwell, is arrested in Colorado. 4 days later, he is convicted and sentenced to 4 years in jail and a $1,000 fine. Anslinger flies in from Washington to see justice done. So begins the federal government's effort to punish marijuana users. 1 year after its ban, Anslinger's law runs into a powerful critic. It was none other than the mayor of America's biggest metropolitan city, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia of New York. LaGuardia commissions a group of medical professionals from the New York Academy of Medicine to study his city's marijuana problem. This blue ribbon panel visits schoolyards, interviews principals, even tests the effects of the drug on adults. After 4 years of study, the following conclusions are drawn. Smoking marijuana does not lead to addiction. Marijuana smoking is not widespread among school children. Marijuana is not a determining factor in major crimes. Publicity concerning the catastrophic effects of marijuana use in New York City is unfounded. Ironically, LaGuardia obtained the pot used in his study from Anslinger.
And then when the LaGuardia report came out, Anslinger felt betrayed. That was the end of his scientific research in marijuana as far as he was concerned.
No matter what the scientific basis for LaGuardia's study, he is pressured to toe the party line. In the Big Apple, marijuana will remain an illegal drug. Through World War II, marijuana arrests drop. But ever wise to the power of the press, Anslinger begins targeting celebrities and musicians to grab headlines. He arrests jazz drummer Gene Krupa for possessing marijuana, who spends 87 days in jail. Actor Robert Mitchum is busted, and his career is almost shattered after he's arrested at a pot party. But there will be new drugs to combat. One other, legal for the time being, is making history on the battlefields of World War II.
The History Channel now returns to Hooked, illegal drugs and how they got that way.
Of all the new technologies Germany uses in the Second World War, one touches the common soldier and the Führer alike. It is the synthetic chemical amphetamine, more commonly known as speed. The Blitzkrieg could just as easily have been called Speedkrieg.
Everybody was amazed how fast the German panzer troops rushed across Europe westward towards the lowlands. Couldn't believe they could just keep going night and day and so forth. And it was later learned that they were dispensing large amounts of amphetamines to these troops.
Hitler is injected as many as 5 times a day with methamphetamine, a supercharged amphetamine. Scholars claim Hitler's mad rants and blunders were the result of his addiction to the drug. It is also used in the Japanese war effort, given to the Imperial ground forces and kamikaze pilots. The drug of the Axis war machine is a stimulant. It affects the sympathetic nervous system to increase alertness and decrease fatigue. Amphetamines stimulate the adrenal gland to increase spontaneity, initiative, confidence, and a sense of well-being. Amphetamines are commonly associated with appetite suppression, but the drug was first introduced as a lung decongestant, the Benzedrine inhaler, nicknamed Benny in Germany in 1932.
It would clear up your sinuses and do a lot of other things. It wasn't long before people discovered that if you break the inhaler and take the cotton swab, the little cotton swab, which holds all of the amphetamine, some people just swallowed it whole, other people dissolved it in coffee or what have you.
Well, I was just wondering about those bennies and things we've been fooling around with.
A Benny? A Benny? You mean a Benzedrine tablet?
This method of ingestion is commonly called poppin' bennies. At the time, no one knew how highly addictive and powerful a stimulant amphetamines were.
It was quite euphorogenic. It gave people a sense of confidence. Life seemed brighter. You didn't have to sleep as much. You could overcome fatigue. It made doing boring things more interesting. And, of course, weight loss.
1946, amphetamines find their way into post-war society. In Japan, the market is flooded with vast amounts of the drug. In America, housewives take speed to feel better. Amphetamines are to the 50s what opiates were in the past.